My family suspended me until I apologized to my brother. I just said, all right. The next morning, he smirked until he saw my empty table and resignation letter. The company lawyer ran in pale. Tell me you didn't post it. My family's smile died on the spot. My name is Lauren Pierce. I'm 29. They say every family business is complicated, but mine felt more like a trap with a company logo printed on it. The logo was a silver oak tree, etched on every glass door and coffee mug. I used to trace its branches with my thumb during meetings just to stay calm. My brother, Ethan, was the golden child CEO. I was HR girl, the one who handled difficult employees and, apparently, the family's guilt. Last week, he jokingly told the team I only had my job because our parents couldn't throw me out with the recycling. Laughter. Eyes down. My coffee went cold in my hand as I smiled like it didn't slice me open. I reported his behavior formally, like I would for anyone else. That night, Mom called. No hello, no how are you? Just, you embarrassed your brother. The board wants you suspended until you apologize. It's just politics, honey. Be smart. Say you're sorry. My chest burned. I was in my tiny apartment kitchen, the cheap overhead light buzzing like an annoying fly. The sink was full of dishes I hadn't had time to wash. I stared at the company-branded mug in my hand, the silver oak blurred by dish soap bubbles. All right, I heard myself say. Calm, polite, dead. Because in that moment, tracing that stupid oak tree with a wrinkled thumb, I realized something. If they could suspend me like a misbehaving child, they'd never see me as anything else. They didn't know I'd already started writing my goodbye. And my goodbye wasn't just to them, but to everything their name controlled. I didn't sleep that night. I opened my laptop, the screen lighting up my cramped living room, and drafted the resignation letter everyone now pretended was unthinkable. I wrote it like an HR report, clean and surgical. To the board of Pierce Oak Holdings, I hereby tender my resignation, effective immediately. Please accept this as formal notice that I can no longer, in good conscience, remain employed at a company that fails to uphold its own policies against harassment and hostile work environments, even when the offender is family. I added specific incidents, dates, witnesses, the time Ethan slammed a file on my desk and called me emotional overhead, the staff meeting where he mimicked my voice, the Christmas party where he joked I was the diversity hire for ugly sisters. My fingers shook, but not from fear. From clarity. The oak tree logo stared back at me from the corner of the letterhead. For the first time, it didn't look strong. It looked like a family tree rotting from the inside. I printed 2 copies at home, the cheap printer dragging lines of gray across the page. One for my file, one for them. Then I opened LinkedIn, updated my profile headline to HR Director, specializing in workplace culture and compliance, open to opportunities. I hesitated over the open to work banner, then clicked it anyway. By 2:17 a.m., I'd queued an email to the official HR inbox, the external board liaison, and most importantly, the general company address list. A scheduled send for 8:45 a.m., 5 minutes before the Monday morning leadership meeting. I stared at the scheduled email like a ticking bomb made of words. If they wanted me quiet and obedient, they'd picked the wrong daughter. I arrived early the next morning, before the building fully woke up. The lobby lights were still dim, and the janitor nodded at me like always. He didn't know what was coming. No one did. My desk, usually cluttered with sticky notes and half-empty peppermint teacups, looked hollow. I'd cleared it all the night before. The mugs, the framed photo of me and my college roommate, even the little ceramic owl with one chipped wing. That owl was my AI bait breaker. The imperfect thing I kept to remind myself survival didn't require perfection. At 8:44 a.m., Ethan walked into the office with the swagger of someone who had already won. He glanced at my empty desk, smirked, and leaned on the partition. Finally ran home crying, huh? He said loudly, making sure others heard. But then he noticed the envelope resting on the desk. My resignation letter. His smirk twitched. "What's this supposed to be?" he scoffed, but his fingers hesitated before picking it up. I sat quietly in the conference room doorway, just outside his direct line of vision, listening. He skimmed the first paragraph, then the second. By the third, the color in his face drained. That was when the company lawyer, Mr. Whitcomb, came running down the hall. His tie was crooked, his voice shaking. "Tell me you didn't post it," he panted, looking straight at me. But Ethan heard him too. "Post what?" he snapped. Right on cue, every phone in the office dinged at once. A flood of notifications. My email, sent to the entire company. Employees froze. Screens lit up. Chairs stopped rolling. Ethan's hand crushed the paper like it was burning him. "Lauren, what did you do?" he whispered. I didn't answer, because the real twist hadn't hit them yet. The first shock was the email. The second was the attachments. Every incident I documented, screenshots, timestamps, HR complaint logs Ethan had lost, were attached in a tidy PDF packet titled Pierce Oak Workplace Conduct Records, Internal Review. Within minutes, murmurs rippled through the office like a slow-building storm. People glanced at me, then at Ethan, then at their screens again. Some looked sick. Some looked relieved. A few looked grateful. They'd been waiting for someone to crack the oak tree's bark. Ethan stormed toward me, jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might snap. "You blindsided the company," he hissed. "No," I said quietly. "I followed protocol. You just never thought it applied to you." His face contorted. "You think Mom and Dad will let this stand? You think the board cares about your little feelings?" Right then the elevator dinged. My parents stepped out, Mom in her too bright lipstick, Dad in his tailored suit that always smelled faintly of cedar and ego. They scanned the office, clearly expecting applause for showing up. Mom spotted me first. "Lauren, what did you do?" Her voice quivered with performance outrage. I simply turned my phone toward them. A fresh email from the external board liaison. Subject line: urgent. Emergency ethics meeting, 10 a.m. Dad's face stiffened. "Who authorized that?" he demanded. "Your bylaws," I answered. Section 4.2. Any documented misconduct toward an employee triggers an ethics review, even if the offender is the CEO. For a heartbeat, the entire office stood in suspended silence, like the moment before a glass finally shatters. Then Mom said the one sentence that told me they hadn't understood anything yet. "We need to fix this before anyone outside finds out." I almost pitted her. Almost. The ethics meeting was set for 10 a.m., but the real unraveling started at 9:12. That's when the board liaison replied again, this time to everyone included in my original distribution list, including the entire company, including every external auditor on retainer, including the state compliance officer who had been CC'd automatically because of keywords in my report. Ethan read the email over my shoulder, his breath hot with panic. "You CC'd the state?" he choked out. "No," I said softly. "Your internal system did. You built it that way for transparency optics." For the first time in his life, Ethan looked small. My parents pulled me into Dad's corner office, the one with the gold-plated name sign and the leather chairs that squeaked like they were nervous. Mom shut the door. Hard. "Lauren, undo this," she snapped. "There's nothing to undo," I replied. "The review is automatic." Dad pressed his palms on the desk, leaning forward. "Do you have any idea what this could do to the company? To the family name?" I stared at the oak tree emblem carved into his desk, the branches curling like a warning. "Maybe you should have thought about that before protecting Ethan instead of your employees." Mom scoffed. "All this over a few comments? He's your brother." Her voice echoed, brittle and shrill. That was when I realized something heartbreaking. They didn't believe anything Ethan did mattered unless it affected them. "We suspended you for your own good," Mom insisted, her tone softening like she was offering an olive branch dipped in poison. You embarrassed us. Now fix it. I stood, smoothing the wrinkle on my sleeve, a wrinkle I'd noticed earlier but ignored. My one small imperfection for the day. I'm done fixing things for this family. Dad's voice cracked like dry wood. If the board sees this, Ethan could lose his position. I met his eyes. That's not my problem anymore. At 10 a.m., the boardroom felt colder than usual, like someone had turned the AC to revenge. The long glass table reflected everyone's tension. Board members on one side, my family on the other, Ethan in the middle looking like a fallen prince trying to pretend his crown wasn't slipping. I sat at the far end, not as an employee, but as the complainant, a role none of them ever imagined I'd have the backbone to inhabit. The external ethics officer, a calm woman named Marjorie with silver glasses and a voice like she'd dismantled empires before breakfast. Open her folder. Let's begin, she said. We have several reports, all corroborated. Ethan immediately leaned forward. This is a misunderstanding. Family issues should not be treated as corporate misconduct. Marjorie didn't even blink. Harassment doesn't stop being harassment because of shared DNA. A ripple of discomfort passed down the table. Dad tried next. The board knows Ethan has led this company with excellence. She cut him off. This meeting isn't about his revenue. It's about his behavior. Then she turned to me. Lauren, can you confirm these incidents were reported internally and ignored? My throat tightened, but my voice stayed steady. Yes, I followed protocol each time. The responses ranged from deflection to losing the reports entirely. A board member who'd never spoken to me directly suddenly cleared his throat. We also received anonymous testimonies this morning, he said. Employees expressing fear of retaliation if they complained about the CEO. Mom's hand flew to her chest. Anonymous? Who would lie about our son like that? I looked around the table, faces avoiding hers, shoulders stiff, eyes down. They weren't lying. They were finally telling the truth. Then Marjorie dropped the real bomb. Given the severity and documentation, we are recommending temporary removal of Mr. Ethan Pierce from all executive duties pending investigation. The room froze. Even the oak tree logo on the wall seemed to flinch. Ethan shot to his feet, so fast his chair slammed into the wall. You can't do this. This is MY Company. Marjorie calmly adjusted her glasses. No, Mr. Pierce. This is the board's company. You were entrusted to run it, not to rule it. Dad stood too, desperate, voice trembling with the beginnings of panic. We can resolve this internally. There's no need for public filings. But he stopped when Marjorie placed a second folder on the table, a thicker one, stamped with the state compliance seal. This isn't internal anymore, she said. Your daughter's resignation triggered automatic review flags. The state requires an external investigation, and employee testimonies have already begun rolling in. Mom's lipstick looked suddenly too bright for her pale face. Lauren, she whispered, you're destroying your own family. I felt my pulse in my fingertips, steady, not triumphant. I didn't destroy anything, I said. I just stopped hiding it. Ethan pointed at me like he had found the villain in a movie script. She's doing this for attention. She's always been jealous. But then the door cracked open. Our CFO, quiet, meticulous, always carrying a metal water bottle with a dent on the side, stepped in. His voice shook for a moment, then steadied. I submitted a testimony too, he said. Gasps. He didn't look at Ethan. He looked at the board. I've witnessed him yelling at staff, threatening careers, ignoring compliance procedures. We've lost good talent because of him. Another door opened. 2 department heads entered. Then a senior manager. Then a junior analyst clutching her notebook like a shield. One by one, they took the empty seats. Not on Ethan's side, on mine. For the first time, my family understood. They hadn't just lost their control over me. They'd lost the people they thought would never speak. Ethan sank back into his chair, silent, as if the room had finally shown him a version of himself he couldn't deny. And the final blow was still waiting outside that boardroom door. The door opened one last time. Every head turned. In walked the state compliance officer himself. Gray suit, calm expression, a folder tucked under his arm like it weighed nothing. But the weight it carried, I could feel it from across the room. He nodded to Marjorie, then addressed the board. We've concluded our preliminary review based on the materials distributed this morning. Effective immediately, the state is initiating an external audit of Pierce Oak Holdings' workplace culture and executive conduct. Mom let out a broken sound, half gasp, half denial. Dad's knuckles turned white on the table edge. Ethan looked like someone had unplugged him from his own arrogance. The compliance officer continued. Additionally, because Ms. Pierce's documentation included evidence of internal mishandling, we will require temporary restructuring to ensure unbiased cooperation. He placed the folder on the table. The CEO will step down during the investigation. Silence, the kind that feels like a building inhaling right before it collapses. Mom whispered, "This can't be happening." But it was, and for once, I didn't feel guilty for the truth. Just steady. Marjorie turned to me. "Ms. Pierce, though you are no longer an employee, the board would like to offer an apology for the treatment you received. And if you're open to it, your documentation has helped us identify major internal failures. We'd like to retain you as a consultant during the restructuring process." Every eye swung to me. My family looked horrified. The employees looked relieved. And I felt the oak tree motif again, the one carved into every door, every mug, except now it didn't feel like a symbol of their power. It felt like a symbol of something I had finally outgrown. I folded my hands, kept my voice even. I'll help, but not for my family, for the people who never got to speak. As I walked out of the boardroom, people didn't avoid my eyes anymore. Some nodded. One whispered, "Thank you." Outside, the air felt different, cleaner, lighter. Like I'd finally stepped out from under a shadow I didn't even realize had followed me for years. I didn't burn the oak tree. I just let the rot be seen.